Hello, welcome to the AppleInsider Podcast. I'm William Gallagher. Our sponsors this week are Fast Growing Trees and Nordlayer, and you and I are joined by Wes Hilliard in this week when Apple roll out a bunch of updates that really just tell you the good stuff's coming later, and, though, announce a slew of accessibility features that are excellent. Do not let me go without enthusing at you about Apple's new Hold That Thought shortcut. But first, Wes, doesn't this seem like a kind of a strange combination? It's like a quiet week, and yet so much happened.
This is pre-WWDC. That's just how how it goes, especially with accessibility features. We were expecting this. Apple's done it for a couple years now, and it's good because we get a little preview of maybe what's on their mind. No hints at a redesign, but we'll get into more of that later. I did want to mention AppleInsider Plus. We're going to be talking about our macOS wish list as far as what we're hoping for, what we're expecting at WWDC. And you get that by being a paid subscriber. And you get the show ad-free, AppleInsider Plus at the end, and that little bonus topic will play after the show. So stick around for that.
If you're not already a subscriber, well, you can join us for the extended and ad-free version through Patreon or Apple Podcast subscriptions. Details of all of that in the show notes as ever, and it would be a treat to have you with us. I think this time it's a full-on dream sequence, really. What would we like in the Mac? Although I still have this secret hope that Apple will just knock one out of the park again like it did with Universal Control. Nobody saw that coming. The ability to move your cursor from your Mac over to your iPad or another Mac, do things and drag things back. Who saw that coming? Only people at Apple. I want more of that, please. But there is so much else that I think basically we'd like fixed, really. That's what's going to be the crux, and that's in AppleInsider Plus. But first, this week, I did mention it, saying we have had updates. I think I sounded a bit disparaging about them, and that isn't fair at all, really. It's just, at this time of year, if there's anything good, Apple's going to save it for the next major release, isn't it? But what did we get this week, and are you far more excited than I am?
Well, I wanted to start with this CarPlay Ultra announcement, and then we can dive into our OS releases. But CarPlay Ultra, have you seen this? This is in the Aston Martin.
I was actually thinking ridiculously. I saw the headline on AppleInsider, and I thought, I'll read that later. And then part of me thought, well, it's never coming to my car, is it? And then I forgot to read it. So I'd actually somehow managed to put it out of my mind. I was thinking only of the iOS releases and things like that. And basically I'm wrong, because CarPlay Ultra is big, and it is such a long time in the making. Have you been exploring this? Have you got an Aston Martin with it installed?
Oh, of course, in my driveway. No, this is something I've been thinking about lately, just in general. Apple has been making a lot of fun stuff in this last decade, right? You can go buy a set of AirPods, you can go buy an iPhone and an iPad, but something they've been working on, CarPlay, Apple Car, it just feels different in a way. Like you have to have a $40,000 buy-in. Maybe in Aston Martin's case, a $70,000 buy-in. I don't know how much this car costs, but it's a high one. It feels weird because in almost every respect, and this is something Apple's never done. They never had a refrigerator. They've never had a washer-dryer unit. HomeKit is introducing some of that complexity as well, but or even a TV set, and a TV set can be between $200 and $2,000 depending on what you're buying. They've never gone that route. The most expensive thing you can buy from Apple is a Mac Pro, and even it is in the sub $5,000 category these days. So, looking at CarPlay and CarKey, it's always been confounding of, well, once you buy something, it might be the last thing you ever buy, right? How many vehicles do people really ever buy in their lifetime? 2, 3?
Oh, I see.
Right?
Sorry, that sounded so dark and ominous that it's the last thing you'll ever buy. But yes, I see what you mean. Not that it's over.
How many cars do you buy?
That's true. I must be on my 4th. I think now, but I kind of run them into the ground. But yes, okay.
I won't get into my car history because I've had a few people decide that I didn't need a car anymore and run into it. But
okay.
Otherwise, yeah, just generally speaking, I'm not going to buy a car every year. Now, I do intend to lease eventually once I get to a financial position to do so, because I want to play with some electric vehicles, and that does help with that. That is the way into a quote-unquote upgrade plan. But you look at CarPlay and CarKey. These are like, I literally cannot access CarKey, period. Zero. There's no way for me to do it. I can't pay any amount of money to have it installed in my current vehicle. I would have to go buy tens of thousands of dollars worth of vehicle to get it. And then you look over at CarPlay. There was, modification kits to get CarPlay from wired to wireless. That was great. It's always been modular. Go buy a new head unit, install it. Now I'm looking at CarPlay Ultra. It's an entire dash system. Can I go and buy a dash replacement for my car? Is that even feasible? Technically, yes. I've known people to modify cars, right, to great extents. And I hope that in the coming years, maybe not tomorrow, it takes time, but I'm hoping the same people that develop CarPlay head units and other things will develop a in-dash replacement system, or even just, here is a larger screen that you can mount to your dash that does CarPlay Ultra and a bunch of its functionality. You just won't get it in your dash. That would be fine too. Right, so it just brings it back to my mind of, it's interesting that this is the one place where Apple tech is just almost inaccessible to users.
I think it might possibly be in AppleInsider Plus last week, but I remember saying that I just bought my wife one of those Kobo e-readers, and that this was an awful decision because now it was so good I wanted one. I'm not going to buy her a £70,000 Aston Martin car and then want one for myself, even if it's in the right colour. But it does occur to me that for that amount of money, you probably get something else other than CarPlay Ultra that must be appealing to somebody. It could be worth.
It's a car with an engine and wheels. I mean, that's the thing. That's all I need, right? I'm the guy who's going to go buy a Honda Civic with CarPlay Ultra, right? A $17,000 vehicle, but that's fine. It's just, it's frustrating because it's a want you can't have, right? Obviously, there's some jealousy involved here. I get that, but it's more about Apple's approach as a company. This is a wider discussion. I don't know if we're going to dive too far into it here. It's very maybe even philosophical, but it's just, you look at Apple, they have recycling programs and green energy programs and all this stuff, and then they're like, oh, if you want to have a customizable HUD behind your steering wheel, well, you have to dump your old vehicle and buy a whole new one for tens of thousands of dollars that you probably don't have, so you're going to get a loan. So now, like, your environmental costs, personal costs, banking and debts and things like that, and it's just, I don't know, it's wild to me that Apple would so heavily invest in a space that they know it is important, because people do buy cars, right? But what happens when you go buy the Aston Martin and you're a tech nerd, right? Maybe you read AppleInsider and you happen to have plenty of money, so you go buy this new vehicle, you've spruced it up, you spend $100,000 on a model, and then in 2 years, CarPlay Ultra Plus 2 comes out and it's not compatible with your vehicle. What do? Maybe you're not a billionaire and can't just go out and buy another $100,000 vehicle. And you're stuck with this, and now you're frustrated at Apple because you want shiny new feature. You can't even get it in your car. There's not even a pathway. There's no upgrade solution. There's no plug-in module, aftermarket solution, nothing. And that's where I'm coming in with this, is just like, part of it is, yeah, I want the new and shiny. But another part is like, what's Apple's strategy here? Like, CarPlay has always been interesting. It's not like they make any money from Aston Martin for having CarPlay in their vehicle. And it is an interesting software choice. And cars do need an infotainment system, but they're still running Android, right? The Aston Martin's CarPlay Ultra, I guarantee you, is just an app launcher inside of Android, just like it always has been. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Apple finally built a backend for a vehicle.
Well, I'm a bit stunned by the Android bit. Otherwise, I'd be straight there. I think you are applying Apple's typical approach to this, and I'm not saying you're wrong, but I mean, the thing with updates and things, usually updates and incompatibility and device obsolescence, that's totally within Apple's control. And here, it really isn't. That's one of the reasons it's taken, 2 years for this to come out. 2 years, is it 1 year or 2 years longer than they planned? But
very long.
Call it 18 months, split the difference. Because I presume it's nothing is totally under Apple's control. They have to work with the manufacturers at Aston Martin and all the other car manufacturers they say they're talking to. And every one of them is working on the car. Every one of them has their own set of concerns. CarPlay is just one of them for it. I'm surprised in a way that some car manufacturers have gone for it. I don't see that there's the opportunity for Apple to do that kind of constant revision. So out of its control and out of its usual price range, possibly out of its usual market, this feels like an outlier for Apple.
It's very odd. Well, this is where Apple Car could have come in, and they could have served
true.
Full vertical integration and control, longer lifespans, upgrade kits. Come buy Apple's new Dash kit and install it in your Apple Car. Right. There's obviously a lot of ways this could have worked, but of course, again, selling an entire vehicle would still be like the opposite of good for their green energy plan and everything like that. Apple 2030. So I don't know. I know there isn't a simple solution to this. Perhaps this is where Apple should have a hardware partnership, but then it would lock it into a specific company like Honda, right? And that would lose Apple. And then would Aston Martin, BMW, and these other companies say, well, if Apple's going to work so closely with Honda and not us, we're just not going to use CarPlay. I understand the delicate balance we're dealing with here. I just feel like there should be a solution. There should be there should be a car consortium. Oh, there is, but they should be talking about this, right? Why is? Well, I know the answer. They want you. They want you to buy a car. They want you to be talking about a new car every couple of years. They want you to get bored. They want you to see the new and shiny and buy the new thing. But this brings me full circle to a new question of Apple should be partnering with someone like, I think it's called Viper, to make third-party car key kits. There's no reason why car key should be locked the way it is behind specific manufacturers' makes and models. I should be able to go and install car key on my vehicle, and I understand that's complicated because of ultra-wideband requirements and stuff, but guess what? Apple, you're in control of the standard. Make it work. CarPlay Ultra, same thing. Sure, I can't go buy a new vehicle every couple of years, but Apple maybe doesn't need to partner with a car manufacturer, but they could partner with an aftermarket provider and work and have them make multiple different versions that are universally compatible that I can go and replace parts of my dash, or at least install a screen that lets me get access to some more of the new and shiny. But in any case, my final point is, I wonder why Apple is so heavily invested in the car when arguably it is the least green thing you can do as a person, right? Public transport and stuff. They're doing Apple Maps transit operations and things like that. But what about the bicycle? I would love to see Apple, maybe this is a WWDC thing, right? I'll put this on my wish list. There should be a CarPlay mode for the bike where I so many e-bikes that I test these days have their own little display, that have their own little computer chip, and they're running different, either just very simple speedometers, or they're advanced enough to have a mapping display. Whatever it is, maybe remove the display and just have the iPhone turn into the display and have little maps and things on there. Maybe Apple doesn't see biking as safe enough to have this kind of system.
That was my first concern, falling off. But yes, my final thought is that I think it's quite interesting that they're calling it CarPlay Ultra. When it was previously announced, they were talking about its CarPlay 2. CarPlay 2 is a replacement for CarPlay 1. CarPlay Ultra is a separate thing. Normally with these things, features come down to lower models eventually, don't they? So we'll get car key at some point.
Well, I mean, I'm just curious, how long will it be before I can walk into a Honda dealership and buy their electric or hybrid 2025, 2026 base model, whatever, maybe the EX model, right? Step it up a tier. And it have CarPlay Ultra and Car Key. Is that just never going to happen? Or is the expense too great? Is the technology package too great? Did Apple design themselves into a corner here? I don't know. But anyway, we spent a lot of time on CarPlay Ultra and the concept behind it. We can move on. It's been in the back of my mind lately of just how odd it is versus everything else Apple does. I love CarPlay. I have an aftermarket head unit installed in my car, and it works. It's a wireless unit. Great. It does the job. I get a nice big Apple Maps view and Apple Music, and they've done a really good job on this interface, and I hope they continue iterating on it. It's just, give us access to some of the other toys, guys.
Well, talking of other toys, other tools, I was disparaging and maybe too much about the releases of iOS 18.5, Vision OS 2.5. I was particularly wrong about that one because I know nothing about it. But then also, was macOS 15.5 this week? I get confused in the points of this. But they are all out, and it just feel like they're tidying up kind of releases. But actually, let's go into that one I really don't know. Vision OS 2.5. Was that an important update in any way?
Vision OS, so no. They added a new feature to Apple TV app, which is nice. But before, you had to kind of dig around for spatial and 3D content, and now it is front and center. It is literally a button called Vision in the sidebar. It's between Apple TV Plus and MLS.
Okay. Not really a lot more to say about that then.
Okay,
no, I can see that.
I mean, I like that I have a destination, whereas before I literally did have to dig, or if I was showing this to someone, I would have to prep the window and have them where they needed to go and hope that it didn't change before they put the headset on.
Right.
So that combined with the previous release where we got the spatial gallery app is nice, but yeah, there's not much to say otherwise.
I don't want to leap around into the accessibility things, but just to briefly put a toe that way before we look at it properly. Am I not right that Apple Vision Pro, possibly later, possibly in these forthcoming accessibility updates, will be able to let you use eye tracking to scroll through apps? Because I thought it already did that, but what am I thinking of?
So, I mean, you look to select things and then click with your fingers, but scrolling is a full manual experience. And I always figured there was a good chance that Apple would rethink scrolling because it gets kind of it's a motion, it's a whole thing. You're moving your hand constantly. Like they even describe it as drawing a curtain string or something. Like if you're scrolling along a web page, you're constantly doing this. So maybe if I had to guess, and I hope that it's not too sensitive, maybe if you look at the edge of a window and it has a scrollable feature, it'll scroll. Or maybe if I close one eye, it'll scroll up, and if I close the other eye, it'll scroll down. I'm not sure what they're going to do here, but it's definitely not a bad idea to come up with a hands-free way to scroll.
I've got this image now of me watching a YouTube video and they say something insane about Apple or whatever, and my eyes, how do you describe it? You kind of throw a glance at the ceiling kind of thing, and suddenly the whole page zooms out the way. Actually, that might not be bad. Okay, I like that. Do we know whether that's just coming in general in the future, or is specifically in these announced accessibility features?
All the accessibility stuff is coming in the fall. The scrolling thing though was a separate announcement. Just let me find this here.
I do like the fact that Apple does this about accessibility most years. They do it ahead of Global Accessibility Awareness Day. which is May 15th, so
Oh.
yesterday as you're listening to this, Apple will never, ever tell you anything about the next version of iOS, except on this day. They tell you tons of things about it, so I enjoy that. So what was the answer there? Is it in the set or...
Eye scrolling was a rumor from Bloomberg, but that's a pretty reliable source. When Gurman gets this specific about a very specific feature, it's probably going to be here, especially this close to WWDC. He's just heard it from a little birdie. Sure, it's a Vision OS 3 feature. I don't think this is technically even accessibility. It's just they're working on how you navigate the operating system.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's come back to accessibility a minute, because it's there's so much to talk about in it. But I don't want to get off the point of the disparaging updates. I've got to find a better name for that. Welcome to the new disparaging iOS. iOS 18.5 shipped, and it has... Well, I knew it had mail refinements, but you were saying there's also got new wallpaper. Did I hear you right with that?
It's literally just the Pride collection. They announced the Pride collection last week,
right.
And now it has arrived. You can go buy the watch band now at the Apple Store. It is available. It is a sport band, so it's $50. You can pair it up nicely with a watch face and a wallpaper.
Yeah.
So cool. Otherwise,
Okay.
there's nothing here. There's like some satellite compatibility updates. Nothing really going on.
I'm doing wrong this week because I thought wallpaper. That's just so exciting. I mean, it reminds me of there was a release of something Apple did a keynote for, and it's this is fabulous, this is fantastic, and the first thing they said was, and it's got wallpaper, and you thought, it's not going to get significantly better now, is it? After that, but in this case, the Pride collection changed my mind. I might actually use that. Okay. This episode is brought to you by Fast Growing Trees. Fast Growing Trees is the biggest online nursery in the US with over 6,000 different plants and over 2 million happy customers. I'm not in the US and still I'm happy, partly because I did order a present from Fast Growing Trees for a friend in the States, but also because yet again, my continuing gardening saga has been helped by all of the expert guides and videos on the Fast Growing Trees website. Now, you do not need to know this, but I absolutely need to tell you this, because this week I dug a hole. Ah, yes. I mean, previously, we've had gardeners in taking down a massive and unfortunately wind-damaged tree, and yeah, all right, we've had a company come in to build us a summer house, fine, sure, but this week, one hole, dug in the soil, that was me. It was specifically a hole that my wife wanted dug so that she could plant a rose, and that's where Fast Growing Trees expert guides came in. There isn't a video about how to dig a hole. I mean, I'm not above saying I'd have watched it if there were, but there is so much about roses. So I read all of that, and now I'm standing there with a shovel. I'm looking manly, the sweat on my brow, my six-pack of Pepsi Max with me, and I actually sound informed. I have a discussion about roses. You can even test me on the subject if you like, although just let me reopen this Fast Growing Trees tab first. The thing is, you can immediately go check out expert guides on everything, and you in the States can go order from their more than 6,000 plants. And then, of course, in just a few days, your order is with you, and you too can get out there digging holes like I did. I'll show you how to do it. Plus, this spring, Fast Growing Trees has the best deals for your yard, up to half off on select plants and other deals. And listeners to our show get 15% off their first purchase when using the code AppleInsider at checkout. That's an additional 15% off at fastgrowingtrees.com using the code AppleInsider at checkout. Fastgrowingtrees.com, code AppleInsider. Now's the perfect time to plant. Use Apple Insider to save today. Offer is valid for a limited time. Terms and conditions may apply. And thanks to Fast Growing Trees for supporting the Apple Insider Podcast. Let me trade you. Apple Maps had 2 updates this week, and I know you know about one, the Michelin, is it Michelin Star, the food one. What is Apple doing with that in Maps?
I did have to laugh because anytime I hear about Michelin, I think of the Michelin Man, and it is the same company. So
yes.
It just, such a fascinating history there. If you didn't know, in France, they were mad that people weren't driving. There were so few people with cars and nobody was driving. So they came up with this whole plot because in order to sell people tires, they need to use the tires and exhaust them, so they go buy more tires. So they thought, well, we just need to make people drive. And so Michelin came up with this whole idea that has now turned into this entire business model of, we're going to just tell people what businesses are nice in the area, so they drive to them. And it started out as a 1-star Michelin rating or whatever, and then they added more stars later, and then it turned into the massive, ridiculous thing that it is today, that like entire TV show plot lines are built around, we need to get our Michelin star, and it's a tire company. So just fun little history there.
I didn't know the history, but I love that it started in France, because of course French food is so well done. You can see the tie-up there. But finally, I take it Apple Maps has cottoned onto this in some way.
Well, so Michelin, Open Table, and there was another one, like professional magazines and just professional resources are being added to Apple Maps as kind of review standpoints. So if you open a restaurant in Apple Maps that has been given a Michelin star, you'll see that in the layout. It'll pop up and say, there's a Michelin guide for this restaurant. You can tap on it, read more about it. There's also a specific filter for if you're in a town with multiple notable Michelin restaurants, you can say, show me all the Michelin restaurants in my area, and that will work. More open table integration also, of course. So I'm hoping, I haven't tried this out myself, but I'm hoping that Apple's working towards more modal windows instead of forcing you to open external apps as much. This is bringing back an old joke, but it's, what was the title that I had? Person who knows the secret features thing.
Oh, yes. Oh, I'd forgotten that. I missed that. Now you've said it. Yes, person who knows a lot about the features that don't exist yet. Yeah,
we had an eloquent name
for it and everything.
Anyway, so Apple Maps is one of those ones that's just packed with weird hidden features you've never thought of, right? Having your own library and guides. But on top of that, I like that Apple has direct linkings to things like Booking.com. You can have the Booking app installed on your phone and tap Book Now in Maps, and it launches the Booking app directly. OpenTable and Yelp were other integrations with that, but they relied so heavily that everything you did for a while just opened Yelp. You tap a photo, it opens Yelp, right? It was ridiculous. So now that more in-app reviews and now this Michelin stuff and more open table support, hopefully this means we're going to be in the Apple Maps app more rather than getting kicked off to something else.
I have to say, I do like the Apple Maps app. I was reading a history of Google Maps, and it's very interesting, the history. But there was just this slight air of smugness of how great Google Maps is, and I've been lost because of using Google Maps. So reading warily. But I said I'd swap you Apple Maps news, because this is small, and so small that even Apple isn't that fussed about it, but it is a feature. Look at the quality of information you're going to get here that you really need. Apple has a press site, a newsroom, but it has a different one in every country where it operates. And for some reason, as we record this, it would have been yesterday, so Wednesday, Apple released a press release on its news site, but as far as I can tell, only in the UK. It wasn't in the States, it wasn't in the major ones like China and things, but there it is in the UK one, and it's about a feature in Monaco. It's to do with the Grand Prix, and it's all tied into the publicity of, Apple has this F1 film coming, and they're hyping it up a lot, but also Apple Maps, according to the press release, as of now, has Formula One racetracks highlighted, and it has some sort of I can't remember the name. It's like an experience that you could go through to do with the sights in the film and the rate and all this. And okay, so it's only mentioned in the UK, but it is supposed to be out right now, covering Monaco. I'm in the UK. I went to Apple Maps to Monaco, and well, there's a really nice flyover of the city. I learned a lot about Monaco that I didn't know before, but none of this was there. So I don't know. Did somebody lean on a button? I think we need to keep an eye out for this because Formula One film F1 must be coming out quite soon. Maybe this is the first ever Apple Maps tie-in with a major motion picture, and it hasn't worked yet. But there you go. You heard it here first, and conceivably you heard it here last.
That sounds like a guide.
So,
yeah, that sounds like a...
No, more elaborate than that because there's a guide there already and actually a nice link out to coverage of F1 on Apple TV and things like this. I explored the lot looking around this place.
I had a question about Apple Maps. What do you think of the continued tribalism around Apple versus Google as far as the map networking stuff goes?
I think it's out of date now. Apple Maps was poor. I loved the joke somebody came up with. One of those jokes you wish you'd thought of. They wouldn't trust Apple Maps for all the tea in London. That it was that wrong with its locations and things for it. Wrong cities, wrong towns. But right now, I think it's just down to aesthetics. I believe Google is supposed to kind of nudge you towards places where they've advertised and things like that, and I don't know it, but I can believe it. I just remember, I mentioned I got lost with Google Maps. It's not fair to say that and not also say this. I used Google Maps that day because I got lost with Apple Maps. Right. I had to go to a thing. And I learnt much later, it put me down like on very close to the right place, but the wrong side of like a trading estate or whatever the equivalent is. And so there I am in, I believe, the wrong place. Apple Maps thinks you're right there. Give up on Apple Maps, try Google Maps. And firstly, I could not get Google Maps to go. I told it, this is where I want to be. Please start giving me directions. And just finding the button was maddening. And when I finally did that, it directed me to somewhere else that was also wrong. So I find the design of Google Maps annoying. I don't find it more reliable than Apple Maps. And I can hear my voice going off into a rant. Protect me. Drag me back to normality.
Google Maps is just ugly. I mean, it's too information dense. It's utilitarian. It feels like I'm looking at one of those old paper maps that, because it was paper, they had to literally fill in as much information as they could on the map as possible, and the tiniest text in the world. You had to pull out a magnifying glass just to read everything. That's Google Maps just feels like a legacy product at this point, and they're adding more on top of it. And honestly, I don't even hear Google talk about Google Maps that often these days. If you're out there and I get it, right? They really did not have a good release. Apple Maps was a terrible launch, and followed by multiple updates that did not do much to help it. But in the decades since, it is a completely different application, and I recommend anyone using an iPhone should not be using anything other than Apple Maps. Unless, for some reason, because they do exist, there are locations, some in the United States, some around the world, that are just dreadfully bad with Apple Maps. Now, there is something you can do about that. You can actually give Apple feedback. There is a feedback button, and they are very responsive. I do this all the time. Anytime there's a new restaurant in town, a new business, I take photos. I get their business hours and their phone number. Yes, I'm doing work for Apple at that point, but I submit a feedback form telling them everything they need to know. And then within a week or so, there's a whole business that I just added to Apple Maps that now I have access to, which allows me to log it in Apple Journal, right? It all ties together.
Right. When you said that about small print and everything, one thing I don't like about Apple Maps is if I'm trying to see a street name, I'll pinch out to kind of make the street larger, and it makes the street larger, but it makes the font of the name smaller. I don't know why it does that. It's like it's giggling at me. Yeah. But then also last night, I was in a restaurant and I realised that I needed to get some shopping afterwards, and I keep trying this. For some reason, something always goes wrong, but I did that. Remind me to buy milk, whatever it was, when I leave here, and it correctly added a reminder, and to when you leave here. But the here, it said, it named the restaurant as Jefferson's. Got the right address, called it Jefferson's, and I had to ask somebody near me, what is Jefferson's? Apparently, it was a restaurant before last, and 2 restaurants ago in that location, probably 15 years ago. So that's not fantastic data, but I didn't realise I could just go in and update it.
Yep. And you don't have to be that in depth with feedback. You can just submit this restaurant name changed.
Right.
There's
and they'll
Yeah, there's an option to say, okay, here's their actual business hours, here's their phone number, here's their email address. You can do that, but you can just go in and say, hey, I'm at this restaurant right now and it's not called this. And that can be the whole feedback.
All right, cool. This episode is brought to you by NordLayer. You've heard of NordVPN. Of course you have. It's the leading VPN for personal use. But then there's also NordLayer, which is network ready for businesses, and it combines VPN with access control and threat protection. NordLayer prevents phishing, ransomware, and malware attacks. It lets businesses monitor the health of all its team's devices and user activity and network events. NordLayer spots threats before they can escalate. The company uses dark web monitoring. It handles data breach prevention and breach management. It also helps your business meet industry regulatory requirements for security and compliance. And NordLayer is about zero trust network access, granting access only to the right users, and even then, only under the right conditions. All of this, and it takes 10 entire minutes to set it up. Plans start from just $8 per user per month, and there are special rates for teams with over 50 members. But then there's also an exclusive offer for Apple Insider listeners. You can get up to 22% off NordLayer's annual plans, plus another 10% with coupon code AppleInsider-10. That's coupon code AppleInsider, one word, all lowercase, -10. Go to nordlayer.com/AppleInsider and use the coupon code AppleInsider-10 to save right now. And thanks to NordLayer for supporting the Apple Insider Podcast. We're covering a lot of services, I realise. We've gone from the OS releases into services like Apple Maps, but this week also saw some movement on Apple Music. A couple of things again on Apple Music. So, actually, this is a trade-in episode. You tell me yours about Apple Music, and I'll tell you mine. How's that? Because you've got sound therapy, which would appear to be very serious.
Sound therapy. So, Apple actually... the last time we talked about Apple Music proper on the show was when they announced sleep sounds playlists and different mood playlists and stuff like that. And now here we are again talking about sound therapy, which is just even deeper collaboration between Apple and a Universal Music Group. They're basically making, I guess, and updating regularly focus and sleep and different mood tone playlists that are specific to the brain, right? There's a lot of science behind specific sounds helping with sleep or helping with focus or helping with various things. So they are working to generate these playlists. Now, cool. It's in Apple Music. You can go listen to it. That's not why I have this in the show.
Right. Why do you?
Well, if you listen to sound therapy without doing anything else, if I'm just listening to my playlist and I'm like, oh, I'm going to turn on sound therapy, well, then for the rest of time, I'm going to get recommended audio, noise, neural tone. My up next playlist will be, all right, here's some Fall Out Boy, here's some Panic at the Disco, and now here's Cloud Noise 9. And I'm like... Why? I will forever beat this drum. I don't care who. If you have a cousin that works at Apple, someone has a direct line to Tim Cook. Somebody needs to make a phone call to say, look, this is all great. I personally would love to have automations that, and I do actually, but I'll get into that, that play sleep sounds before I go to bed. That's all great. But then I am forever ruined because guess what you do a lot of? Sleep.
Okay.
So guess what my charts are going to be for my Apple Music replay for that year? Number 1 on the playlist, sleep sounds. Wow. Thanks, guys. I slept a lot this year. I must have really done a good job listening to that music. It ruins a lot, very many aspects that you're supposed to be using Apple Music for. It destroys your recommendations. Even your radio station. I go to my personal station or my Discovery station. If I listen to any of this stuff without turning off the algorithm, it takes over. It's like if you have a child and your child just starts listening to the kids channel and it's on your account, game over. That's all you're ever going to get recommended for the rest of time. There is a solution. You can go turn off the algorithm in settings.
Right, that's a bit nuclear, but you can do it.
It's a focus mode and a shortcut. So there are now a lot of actually good options for doing this, but it's still full manual. You can set up automations, but the user has to know it's there. Apple, just let us turn off the algorithm on a per album, per playlist, per song basis. That's it. That's all we need. One toggle.
Gosh, so many thoughts. I remember, who was it who told me that they figured all this out by star ratings. They gave all of their wife's favourite tracks a 1-star rating, and all of their tracks a 5-star rating. And I thought, curious mix there. But it meant that he only got his, and presumably she never got any. But okay. Also, that shuffling thing. I mean, this is back in the iTunes days. I was listening to Doctor Who radio dramas from Big Finish. I used to write them, and they're great. But I accidentally was listening to one and unknowingly had nudged the shuffle button. So this whole story, every chapter of it was played in a different order. And it was only when I somehow got a chapter back again that I realised. And because it was Doctor Who and time was all over the place, it worked. It was really good. So I quite enjoyed that little adventure there, and now you're just thinking I'm strange. But okay, I said I'd trade you again. You reminded me, actually, I have 2 Apple Music things. One's from about 2 weeks ago now. I kind of missed it happening, but the ever-growing list of Apple Music curated playlists has been added to with one called the Viral Chart. Have you used this set? Have you come across it?
The Viral Chart?
The Viral Chart, yes.
I don't think I've used that specific one. I know, what is it? Shazam has been doing different
That's
playlists.
Exactly what this is. Yeah, that's Shazam's one. This is a current list of the top Shazammed songs in the world ever, and it's fantastic because it is so eclectic. You'll have punk rock, brand new stuff. One of my favourites, Francisca Valenzuela. I struggle to pronounce her name. I'll put it in the show notes where I can at least try to spell it. And right next to it, there'll be something like Patsy Cline, something maybe from the 1940s. You can imagine there's a pub somewhere in the States where someone caught something on the radio and thought, what is this ancient track? But Shazam caught it and added it to the list. It's just slightly too eclectic to be useful. I think it's very distracting listen, but you certainly discover new music through it, so that was fun. But the thing I thought I was going to tell you about Apple Music is that as we record this, it's just been announced that Apple is at least starting to work on helping people move from Spotify and, I was going to say other services. What other services are there? There must be some. YouTube. Oh, really? I never think of YouTube for music, of course. Move over into Apple Music. Now, the reason I say I'm starting is that word of this appeared in a quite buried Apple support document, and it's like it only worked in one territory. It's back to this thing of Apple working in multiple countries. Just like with the newsroom, they have support documents for different territories. And I'm not going to admit that it's quite interesting looking at the differences between 5 different countries' Apple Music support documents, because then you might hear, but in this case, a new feature's come, and presumably it'll roll out everywhere. I don't know how useful that is, though, because I feel like people who like Spotify are going to stay on Spotify, and I'm on Apple Music, I'm going to stay on Apple Music. But for those people who do want to move, are you a mover?
This gets into tribalism again. Some people don't care; they just want their music. Some people, really like Spotify. That playlist that recommend, like they have their discovery playlist, which is basically their algorithmic thing that they bought from a company a while back. That is actually really good. That Apple still hasn't been able to properly replicate. There's reasons to use Spotify, but it's from my own casual observation, I've seen more and more people in the real world moving over to Apple Music simply because Spotify is, their business model is terrible. They've not made money in a long. I don't think they've ever actually made money. Most of their expendable funds come from venture capital, and because of that, they're always chasing new ways to get people to stop listening to music. I know, right? A music app that wants you to not listen to music. So they've got podcasts on there. Now they have AI stuff where you can generate songs, and that goes back to not listening to real music. They want you to listen to fake music that they don't have to pay for because it saves them money. The more time you spend on Spotify as a paid user listening to actual licensed music, the less money Spotify makes. It's wild, right? So Apple Music, though, has leaned heavily into a combination of algorithms and curation, and I think they're doing a better job. Right? You still can't beat Spotify's algorithm. I'll give you that. It is nice, but Apple Music Discovery and and the new music mix and your personal playlist are all really powerful. But I've actually found if you want to give Apple Music a try, go in and find their human curated playlists, and you will discover more music than you ever thought possible. Right? I have several of Apple's playlists, so. The way I see people use Spotify, it's kind of turn off your brain, click a button, and just play music on loop forever on this Discovery playlist. You have no idea who you're listening to. You have no connection to it whatsoever. It's just every now and then you run into a beat you like and you hit you favorite it, and then it's added to your collection, right? Apple Music's much more deliberate in its listening experience, so I like that humans curate these playlists and go in and choose what they believe as music professionals belongs here. The Lifted playlist is a
I don't know this one at all. The Lifted playlist. I've completely missed that.
There's dozens and dozens of these playlists, so you're not going to know them all. But Lifted is kind of like a new examination of what modern alternative music is. Because alternative music used to have kind of this separate from genre meaning, and now it's fallen into pop, more or less, which is weird. But this playlist is just awesome, right? So there's just everything from R&B to alternative, but there's also like the best go-tos. There's Alt Control, which is where I get to learn about all the new alternative music and stuff coming out. They always have really good stuff. I discover a lot of the stuff that becomes popular from that, actually. And then they actually have, like, if you're an anime fan, they have a whole separate channel in Apple Music for anime. They have the Breaking Anime playlist that is also human curated, right? So just a lot of really cool stuff. If you go deep into Apple Music, there's a lot of really interesting stuff in here.
I did not know about any of that. I always thought I was a bit unfair about Spotify because it was the first one I tried when streaming came on, and I listened for a bit, and I didn't ever go past the free tier because there was something, it didn't sound great, and it seemed a bit irritating, and I think the irritations were things that would have gone away if I'd paid. So the ads for a start, and not being able to actually decide what you want to listen to next, but then time goes by, Apple Music comes out, and I'm already using Apple stuff for it, and it came at just the right time for me to get hooked, and the human curation is definitely part of it. One more go at her name, Francisca Valenzuela. If you ask for her essentials, you get this really nice playlist of her best music, and there are essential playlists for a great number of artists, but it's not a greatest hits thing. It's not just the greatest hits album. It's chosen across the whole range of their music, and it alters. I did not know that for ages. You go back in, somebody is really care. I mean, I get the impression that the artists themselves or the record label says, well, this is the latest single, can you bung this in there? Because usually it's way up the list, but still, just listening to essentials.
I think there's just a huge Apple Music division that just does this all day. I just opened Oasis Essentials, updated 6 days ago.
Wow.
So this has 28 songs, 2 hours, and this is a collection of. It's not any specific album. It's not necessarily a specific particular part of their time. It's like saying, "Hey, I want to get into this band, Haim. I've never listened to Haim. I want to know what they're about." So you play their essentials list, you're going to find everything, not just their biggest hits, but just what makes them who they are. And that's cool. Like that's the human curation part of this. I think that gets back to my point, and I'm not trying to be mean to Spotify users, but it's just in my experience, this seems to be the case, that Spotify makes it easy, but to the point of you just don't even think about music. Spotify's for the people who don't care about music, and I mean that in the nicest way. They just want something that is pleasant to them. They want something that the algorithm says, here you go, I know you'll like this. You don't care who plays it. You don't care where it's from. You don't care as long as it is pleasing to your ears and the algorithm will give it to you, you don't have to put any thought into it. And some people like that. Some people don't want music to be an active manual thing, whereas Apple Music requires a little bit of footwork. But in a way, I compare it to being in a record store, shuffling through all the records, finding the artwork that just pops out and says, oh, I gotta listen to this. And that is the difference, I think, between the two services. And you do you. Choose the one that works.
While you were saying that, I thought, I've got to find out when was third go, Francesca Valenzuela, her Essentials updated. And I've got it in front of me and I can't see when it was updated, but I can see that the number one song is a song called Ton Emai from years ago now. And I remember it from years ago now because Apple Music also, in whatever year that was, told me it was the song I played most that year. And I tweeted on that about it. And the next thing you know, she thanked me for it.
Aww.
I was slightly starstruck by that. How about we move on there before I get embarrassed about pronouncing names of people I'm starstruck by. We talked about accessibility earlier, and I really want to cover that because I'm so impressed with some of this. But it is kind of wrapped up with iOS 19. So putting the two together, on the good side, accessibility, and we'll pick out some really key parts, including this great shortcut, Hold That Thought. Mustn't forget that one. I've just realised how ironic that is, that I mustn't forget Hold That Thought. But okay, Apple is though switching stuff off, isn't it? HomeKit or home architecture will be no more, or something like that in iOS 19, and we know that for sure, right?
Well, there was the original home architecture, and we're talking 2014, right? 2015, and they redid it. I forget, a couple years ago, and you could opt in. It was kind of a disaster. People did it. It broke their house. It did not break my house. Yeah. It broke Andrew's house.
Broke mine. Still broken.
That might just be HomeKit.
Never get around to fixing it.
Yeah. HomeKit is a bit buggy, but hopefully they'll get around to fixing that. The one guy working on HomeKit is also in charge of, I believe, Compass and Clock, and I don't
know why. I thought you were going to say also runs the Fantasy Football League or something. But
no, he just
actually has other work.
No, I'm joking. It's just it feels like one person is in charge of all the things Apple forgets exist. Like he's also Apple Invites and Sports, right? Like. He's got a lot to juggle, that one engineer working on all the things Apple is not paying attention to. Anyway, Apple Home did move architectures. It was weird for a bit, but then they fixed it, and now it's safe to do. If you haven't done it, do it, because the official announcement is iOS 19, gone. The support is gone. You don't want to be there. I have a feeling things will just start breaking if it already hasn't started breaking. So go ahead and do the shift. Move to the new architecture. I have a feeling we're going to be moving to a second new architecture within a couple of years, just because of how complex everything is getting with Matter. But that's something for the HomeKit Insider podcast that I do with Andrew. I haven't been on lately. We've had a lot of good guests, so that's given me a little break. But
it's not the same without you, I've got to say. But let's do the Hold That Thought thing, because I will lose it if I don't. Right. And I'm embarrassed about that now. Because it works out. I noticed 4 or 5 times in the last week, I have picked up my iPhone explicitly to do something, and as I've unlocked it, there's been a web page open, something I was doing yesterday, and I thought, oh nuts, I meant to do something, and then I forgot. I think this could be age-related, but 4 or 5 times, and I sat there, and I sweated it out successfully 3 times, I remembered it, but 1 or 2 are gone forever. And as if by magic, Apple announces this new thing called Hold That Thought. It's really buried in the accessibility things. I mean, I wrote about the accessibility and I didn't see this. It was practically in a footnote at the end, but it's a shortcut. You add it to your shortcuts on your Mac, your iPhone, your iPad, and when you run it, it says, so what are you doing now? Okay, and what were you going to do next? And it saves away that information, but it also takes certain other details. And I haven't finished exploring this yet because it is different on different devices. But on the Mac, for example, it will take a screenshot of the whole thing or of whatever bit you're focused on at the moment. It will also take whatever's in your clipboard and add that. All of this goes into a note, which is titled Hold That Thought and then the date and time. So it goes into Apple Notes, you can find it there. You do that when you're on your way to do something, and then when you think, I have no clue what I was supposed to do before I got distracted, you're on the same shortcut, and there's a button in there called Recall, and it plays you back, it shows you everything you saved in there. It obviously depends on you remembering to use it, but I think this is really potentially a great thing. And the reason it's tucked in with accessibility is that Apple's officially announced it for neurodivergent people. But I think truly is for everybody, isn't it? And maybe just writers, but definitely everybody. So this small thing, one line, the moment I heard about it, grabbed it. I've been using it twice so far today, and it's really well done. But then so is all of the accessibility stuff. I mean, what are your favorites from accessibility?
That sounds like a really good read it later kind of function, but like system wide. I like that. You can also, of course, if people forget, this sounds like a similar function. You can always tell your assistant to remind me of this, or add this to a note, right? Just whatever website you're looking at just becomes whatever. Or you can have a note named like read it later and just say add this to the read it later note, and it will just add it, right? So, but of course, shortcuts simplifying that, and you can tie it to your action button, right? Just
exactly.
press and hold the action button, and now you're doing up to business. But I know we're running to the show. I want to mention some accessibility features, do a quick bonus round of a couple of other topics, just literally just name that these things exist, and then we can close up. So from the new announcements, a couple stood out. Nutrition labels, I love it. Do more. The privacy nutrition labels have been awesome. I use that. Like, I was trying to buy a scale, right? A smart scale. And I wanted to make my decision based on what the scale did and what data it collected. And one was like collected every piece of data known to man, and the other one collected like your login. And I was like, okay, well, I think I'll go with the more private option.
Right.
Well, now we're getting accessibility nutrition labels, and now we get to shame apps for not being accessible, and I think it's great because it will work. The apps that are terrible at accessibility will get called out for it. It'll show up in reviews. People won't download it, and then they will be forced to to add features that will get added to the nutrition label. That is awesome.
That's harsh. Do you know, that never entered my head that it was that way around, the shaming thing. I just thought at least now somebody who needs an accessibility feature will know it's there or not
Also
before
that.
they download something. So, but yes, I'm sure you're right. Okay, right. Well, there's a double-edged update. But
it's a good tool, but a little shame goes a long way because these apps usually do check all the boxes. And people forget accessibility. Thankfully, Apple does not. So, Braille access, this is neat. A lot of Braille stuff getting added. You can type in Braille. You can add notes that are in Braille and have them translated for you. You can have these entire... there's this Braille reader document style that is now readable by macOS. So, like, there's a lot of really cool stuff there. And they're also doing this accessibility reader mode, which is system-wide. And now you can choose fonts, font spacings, and a lot of stuff to tweak the accessibility mode to make it more reader-friendly. So maybe you have I forget the name of the font, but there's this dyslexic-friendly font that you can get that makes it easier to read. Now you can just install that to be in reader mode everywhere across the OS. So that's cool.
You were quite right about us coming to the end of the show, and we do have lots of little bits to do, but I particularly want to move on to that because I've realised we've been talking for, I don't know, several days now, and we haven't said AI. This must be fixed because you actually have what I know it's AI news, but is it useful AI news?
Well, we don't know what this looks like or what this is, but there's a rumor saying that Apple could use Apple Intelligence to manage your battery. On this top level, this is dumb because we already have system-wide management of the battery through machine learning, through different algorithms, different tools. The devices know about their battery. There are specific chipsets, but this takes it a step further, and this is where I can be a proponent of this. First of all, as a user, again, never think about your battery. Stop it. Stop doing this weird thing where you charge between 20 and 80%. Who cares? Just charge your phone. Use MagSafe. It doesn't matter. You're going to save a couple of hours, and you're still going to need a battery replacement or a new device in 3 years, regardless. So we won't hand on that too much. We don't have a lot of time. But what I do think this AI battery management can do is take into account things it had no access to before. So it could maybe this gets to the contextual intelligence stuff that we're going to get later this year. But maybe it'll know that you have a calendar event for a certain time. Maybe your alarm is set earlier in the day, so it needs to make sure that you charge fully before waking up, right? Whereas the delayed charging would delay. If you normally wake up at 9, it would start charging at 8:30 to top off your battery. But if you woke up at 6 that day, your battery would only be at 80%. So now the intelligence feature would be able to see personal details, all on device, all private, but it would have those personal details to understand when to charge and better manage your battery life. And I think that would be interesting.
That actually makes sense. At the moment, so AI, I thought, yeah, okay. But no, I could see that. That's an actual useful thing. In the list of things to quickly touch on, one of them is Fortnite is still not on the App Store. And frankly, I'm desperate for it to come back. Every day I check. I have a feeling Apple might be slow walking it through the process, but there we go.
I'm really eager to play as Darth Jar Jar and get out on the battlefield and do the thing you do in Fortnite. Winner, winner, chicken dinner, all that stuff, you know.
You're just making up words now, but okay. Stay tuned for urgent updates about Fortnite on the App Store. We will break into other podcasts to let you know the moment it's there. Things I'm slightly more interested in. I started the whole today saying disparaging things about iOS updates, and now there I am basically mocking Fortnite for it. But somewhere in between the two, we have a couple of rumours about, I can't believe I'm going to say this, the iPhone 18, 19 and 20 that we could just rattle off with. This is what's said, do we believe it? Under display, Face ID, go. What do you think?
Sure. This is rumored for the iPhone 18 Pro by Ross Young, who is now working at Counterpoint Research. I don't know when that happened. But yeah, he left the display supply chain, whatever, consortium. He was the CEO there, and I guess now he's the vice chair, CEO, whatever, VP. Anyway, of that research firm. Cool. Anyway, he's still a display guy. He still knows what he's talking about. I believe this. We've been working towards Face ID sensors under the display for a long time, but that is only Face ID sensors. So it's the long pill in the dynamic island. The selfie camera, the circle, is still going to be above the glass, at least in iPhone 18 Pro.
Oh, I see. Okay. I got excited there. But I'll be a little bit excited. Next, Apple's 20th anniversary iPhone will be something. Go.
So I'll go read the articles. There's a lot here. New display tech, that's cool. True. But I will say, we don't know whether to call this iPhone 19 or iPhone 20, because Apple pulled a fast one on the 10th anniversary of iPhone and skipped iPhone 9 and called it iPhone 10, and instead was an iPhone X, so iPhone 10. I wonder if we're going to call this one iPhone XX, right?
Right. No, we must have covered this before, because you go down this line and it's going to be triple X in 10 years' time, and Apple's not going to do.
I think it would be very funny.
The iPhone rude, is it? It would be good. You know, this would have been long before your Mac times, but there was a Mac called the Mac SE, and it was followed by the Mac SE/30.
Yes.
Gorgeous machines, really great. But the Mac, going by Apple's naming convention at the time, it should have been X.
Yes.
The update to the SE should have been the Mac SE X. And for some reason, and who knows why, Apple bowed out. But, okay, the Apple XE10.
So the iPhone, they could just skip naming altogether and just call it the iPhone. I don't know. This could be the year they finally change names. But whatever the case, either the 19 or the 20, that could be the device we get the selfie camera under the display. And it would be a perfectly crystal clear, no cutout, flat display. all glass iPhone. There's all these rumors around it, right? It's going to be this, the operating system is going to move towards more and more transparency and relying on external sensors to create the backgrounds of apps, and who knows? This is so far away, it feels fantastical nonsense the usual we get. It's going to be an iPhone, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And then now, one last thing, iPhone 20 could get the 2027 iPhone is the easiest way to call it. Whatever comes out in 2027, the 20th anniversary iPhone could get unified memory, which is an M-series chip thing. Cool. That'll make graphics and processing much better on A-series chips. That'll be neat. Yep.
Okay, that sounds all right. I think it'll be called the Steve Jobs Tribute iPhone, the STT iPhone. You heard it here, and never again. Okay. This is the point in the show where two things happen. I check where we can find out where you're hiding these days, but also one of the places you can be found is the Apple Podcast reviews things, and we've had problems with that reason. Not us particularly as a show, but in podcasts in general. You pointed out you'd found out how Apple games the system, and we all agreed, everybody, we would only post 5-star reviews at the AppleInsider Podcast just to see if that alters the result. So, Wes, was the science experiment successful?
Not quite. What's funny is right now, if I go to Apple Podcasts, the first review is from April 30th, right? So an older review, and it's about our audio levels, which we've corrected. But yeah, it's just, I don't know what thought process goes into which reviews go where and what order they show up in. Because if I look at it, it's April 30th, Monday, Sunday, May 5th, May 3rd, April 30th, April 28th. So I don't know what they're doing here. But we have 2 new reviews this week I wanted to point out. We have a 5-star review from Genoser, or Genoser, however you want to say that.
Oh, hang on. That's a Star Wars reference, isn't it? Genoser from, I want to say Rogue One, but ignore me. I'm in the middle of Andor. It's on my mind. Okay. So 5-star review. Yeah.
Yeah, they've been listening to the podcast for 4 years, and they think that we're a great trove of information. They've never heard a bad episode, and they'll keep listening. So thanks for the 5-star review. Awesome always to hear from you guys. If you're enjoying the show, happy to hear. And then we have Fly Away Mike. I hope this isn't my boss. 2-star review. They liked the show. They said it used to be great, but now politics have ruined it. This is just another one of those. They don't like my obnoxious politics dominating conversations. They must not have listened to the last 2 months of the show where we've had Controversy Corner, and the last 2 episodes have not had a Controversy Corner because we did not need one. But apparently my politics have ruined the show. So 2 stars, fine. We've locked it behind a door. If you want to skip politics, skip any chapter labeled Controversy Corner. Otherwise, we pretty much keep the show focused on the tech and the tech news. Obviously, it's going to always leak over to policy side sometimes when we're talking about Fortnite and everything. But we always appreciate y'all's reviews, and we're happy to do things. But as I've said before, as far as politics go, we're not going to not talk about something just because someone might not like hearing about it. I don't like the state of the world myself, but it is the world we live in, and we do have to talk about it. So we're not changing that now.
I've got to say, I've kind of come off Apple News Plus since the last elections, both the US and the UK one. I just needed to step away from news for a bit. But although I'm slightly coming back, and I'm finding again, there's no point reading Apple News in the UK on a Saturday because it's all football results and things. And you're reading a headline that so-and-so dies saving something, and it's a goal at the end of it. So I walk away from that. I come back the next day. We have to cover this stuff because it's real and it's happening and it's affecting us in the end. But I keep saying this. Controversy Corner was your idea, and I am so pleased that we do it there.
Yeah, I mean, it's just always funny to me that people are like, I listened to Controversy Corner and I hated it. I'm like, well, the point is you can skip it. But anyway, I hope you guys are enjoying the show, and please, of course, always keep leaving your reviews. 5 stars, 2 stars, it's fine. We just like hearing from you guys, and you can always email us. You can leave comments on Blue Sky. My DMs are open. You can always leave a private message. I'm also on Mastodon if you want to reach me there. Hillytech pretty much everywhere. Wes at AppleInsider.com for my email. But yeah, always happy to hear from you guys.
In my case, then, I should say, people said some very nice, forgiving things about my YouTube poster work last week that I thought was so terrible. I think they thought it was so terrible as well, but they were nice about it. So I'm encouraged. I'm staying on YouTube, 58 keys on there. It's really specifically for writers who use Macs and things like that. But that's a place where I spend a lot of my evenings. Otherwise, direct access to me, William at AppleInsider.com. And actually, we mentioned podcast problems, audio problems. I've just got a really long email for it. Somebody that I think has actually managed to solve my last remaining problem. So I won't name them until I've tried it out and seen, but you know who you are, and thank you. So, and actually thank you to everybody for listening for us. Thank you as well to our sponsors, Fast Growing Trees and Nordlayer. And if you are an Apple Insider Plus subscriber, don't go anywhere, just stay right there, because in one moment's time we will be diving in deep on what Apple should be doing, what Apple we hope will do for the Mac at WWDC. But until then, or at least until next week, thank you for listening, take care of yourself, and we'll be back next week.
Yep, talk then.